What was Jesus doing between the time he said, "Into your hands I commend my spirit," and breathed his last breath on the cross and resurrection morning? Was he sleeping? Do we have enough scriptural evidence to answer that question? The answer is yes. Now follow me. In the Old Testament scriptures, there is a Hebrew word called Sheol. In some translations, they translate it grave, place of the departed, even hell. It should never be translated. It is a place. It is a place for the departed, but it's a very specific place for all who died before Christ died on the cross. Now, how do we know what it's like? Jesus described it. In Luke, the 16th chapter, beginning with the 19th verse. You can read it on your own. Note that Luke 16, beginning with the 19th verse forward. It was not a parable. He did not preface it. He spoke in parables. It was a factual account. It's about two individuals. One is named and one is not. One is named Lazarus. No, this was not the brother of Mary and Martha. Another Lazarus. And a rich man. Lazarus was a beggar, and he begged at the rich man's gate. They both died. And it describes that the rich man went into the pot of Sheol, because Sheol had two areas that we would call Hades. And Lazarus died, and Jesus terms this Abraham's bosom. The rich man was in torment, and he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham and called out to him and said, "Father Abraham, send Lazarus with some water to dip and put it on my tongue, for so great is my torment." Abraham says there's no passing from here to there, nor from there to here. So the rich man says, "Send Lazarus to my brothers to warn them of this place." And Abraham says they have the prophets and they have Moses. If they don't listen to the writings of the prophets and the writings and teachings of Moses, they're not going to listen to one raised from the dead. That's the background. Now, all who departed in faith went into what was called Abraham's bosom. Jesus becoming a man, a human being, taking on the form of a man, must complete the rest of the picture, the rest of the task. He would descend into what is called Abraham's bosom. He would even preach, because all the Old Testament believers that were making sacrifices and not really realizing that all the sacrifices that they were making were being fulfilled in one, the Christ, the Messiah, the Lamb of God, who would take away the sin of the world. They had to hear it. So Jesus preached and explained to them, and all of Sheol heard the message being preached, the message of the gospel, the fulfillment of it. And then Jesus led Abraham's bosom out of Sheol. He emptied Sheol's. How do we know that? Let's look at the writings of Paul to the book of Ephesians. We're going to read the fourth chapter, and he begins by quoting from the Psalms. He says, "When he ascended on high, he led captives in his train and gave gifts to men." Now, that's a quote from the Psalms, but then Paul goes on to explain its meaning. What does he ascend mean, except that he also descended to the lower earthly regions, referring to Sheol, to Abraham's bosom. He who descended, referring to Jesus, is the very one who ascended higher than all the heavens in order to fill the whole universe. So you see, Jesus descended, preached in Sheol, then took all of Abraham's bosom, and it says he led them in his train, went up and brought them into the third heaven. So now, when a believer in Jesus Christ, one who has been born of the Spirit by faith in the atoning work of Christ on Calvary, when we die, we don't go to Sheol. We go, it tells us in scriptures, that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So we rejoice that Jesus completed a work. He set the captives, they are called, the captives free. May God bless you and make you a blessing.